So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the third webinar of the AI and Blockchain Convergence Task Force. This is the third out of 4 webinars that we have been going to host this year with the task force. And thank you to all the speakers and Thomas for being our moderator. As always, it's really nice to have you all here. Just let me start to explain a little bit what are we doing here, and also because I always forget to say who I am. I'm going to start with that, and I will let you know after what is going to happen today. So my name is Mariana de la Roche. I'm one of the board members of INATPA. I'm an independent consultant, and I've been in the industry for already quite a long time. Besides being on the board, I lead the sustainability and social impact efforts with the working group of INATPA, and I'm also one of the list of the task force on AI and blockchain. So this task force actually came because we saw a need to start breaking silos. We saw that there is the bad habit of always referring to areas of technology in isolation, like blockchain and crypto, AI, the digital worlds, virtual reality, augmented reality, and so on. But there's a fundamental need to start to look at this in a more holistic perspective. And this is basically what the task force is doing, is trying to understand how blockchain and AI play a role to make each other better, and how they can help each other to mitigate some of the risks that they have by themselves. And in doing this, we have done already a couple of things. We published a position paper on the role of both technologies, looking at both technologies and technology in general just as a tool that can be used for good and for bad. So how we actually commit and present an example as leaders of the industry to set the right path for the technologies to help us achieve a more sustainable world, a more equitable world, and a more fair world for all of us. So the position paper is available in our website. You can simply go there and you can download it. The report is also there. The report is really interesting because it's a really long report, but it has the different topics that we are going to be discussing through the webinars, but also is just a general presentation of what are the different industries and the different use cases in which blockchain and AI will have major potential, or they will interplay, or where we actually see that this is going. So you have over 50 people that participate in the report. So it's actually a consolidated view of different industry players. There's people from the World Bank as well. So it's really interesting to read, to have an overview of both technologies. We also have the webinars that is more to have an open discussion on different sectors and areas where we see the technologies come together. The first webinar was about identities. The second one was the impact of blockchain and AI when it comes to DAOs and governance models. And this one is the issues around ethics, which I think that is one of the most interesting ones when it comes to the interplay of both technologies. We will have a fourth webinar, as I mentioned, that is happening during the INATPA Digital Week, so 2 weeks from now in October. And this one is going to be more looking at use cases. So we will have projects that are already working with both technologies, presenting what is it that they're doing. And other thing that we did with the task force was a reply to DG Competition on a consultation that they have on competition law around generative AI and the virtual worlds. And what we did was presenting our positioning how blockchain could help to achieve a competition law and promote competition in those areas. The 2 remaining activities that we will have, or that we have for this year, is a mapping exercise where we are collecting information about different projects working on the intersection of these 2 technologies. And we are looking at what is the role of blockchain and what is the role of AI in those projects. And we are going to make this list of projects publicly available for everyone to look at them as inspiration, or to learn more about how these two technologies can support the work that projects are doing. And last but not least, we are putting together a position paper. It's more a policy paper where we are looking at different regulatory frameworks worldwide that have been published already around AI in particular. And we are going to start looking about how blockchain can help us to achieve some of the targets that were put on those regulations, or how it can help us to mitigate some of the risks that we are seeing and the regulators are seeing and were presented on those regulations. With that said, as you can see, it's a lot of work what we have been doing. We have been really busy this year. We are looking into the continuation of the task force. Maybe for next year, we are still in discussions to see what else we can do and how we can bring value to the industry. So if you want to participate on this, please contact Bara. I think that was all that I needed to say. We will have now a keynote of Monique Monroe, who is a board of directors at Hedera, and she's going to set the stage for the conversation that will follow after that. That is going to be moderated by Thomas, and then we have like 3 amazing speakers that are going to be discussing more around the topic of ethics, AI, and blockchain. So that was all about that I needed to say. So thank you very much again for joining us today. And but if you help me, we can put the video of the keynote of Monique. Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you so much, Mariana. I will play it now. Please let me know in case, there's an issue with sound or something.
Hi everyone, this is Monique Morrow, and I wish I could be there with you all for this wonderful conference or webinar with regard to talking about ethics and AI and distributed ledger technologies. But I want to fundamentally set up the conversation itself as to why we are discussing it. You're going to find out a little bit throughout this presentation that I'm going to take you on a journey, and one of them is from the angle of the Humanize Internet, which is a Swiss-based nonprofit, which I am a co-founder of, which really looks at the intersectionality of ethics and technology and various states of technologies. But it's not going to be in a sort of a filter bubble of a conversation. It has to be more to look at it holistically, hence why I'm going to be looking to have this discussion with you, at least prompt for an important discussion throughout the webinar itself. So one of the things that we have to think about is looking at the macro overview of what I consider the humanized internet in terms of shaping ethics itself. When we think about ethics, it's fundamentally looking at it from that is contextual. If you think about it from all of these sets of technologies, it's really about do no harm, if you will. It's a kind of a do no harm aspect of the conversation that we need to have. You have to think about, what has been the technologies, what has been the shaping of the internet for these past years, the shaping of the AI conversation overall in these past many years, looking at it in terms of how, for example, this is the journey I'm going to take you on, where it kind of shapes what's happening in, I'll call it democracy, but what's happening in governments as an example, which is quite pertinent and relevant to today. And looking at, for example, social media aspects of why we have to care. What do we mean by deep fakes, and what constitutes deep fakes? Is that something that presents a harm? And of course, thinking about issues around experiences, around the processes itself. So we have to think about the whole conversation in a holistic manner when we're talking about, things of the sort of what ethics means in these sets of technologies. This is an eye chart, but fundamentally, the purpose of this chart is to look at the various permutations of AI for the past many, many, many years. If we look at it from the 1940s, when these conversations were being set up throughout the 1950s to the 80s and the 70s, it takes us up to the 20s itself. You can see the inputs and outputs to the conversation that starts to set up the whole issue of the rise of, if you will, of AI, artificial intelligence, the boom, and the fact that we're talking about, if you will, data and data in itself. Data kind of holds this aspect of why we have to care. The other concern, I think, or maybe not so much of a concern, but a question to posture is this polarity between, if you will, the polarity between something that needs to be revenue generating by some of the companies and organizations to that which may constitute safety and ethical issues overall. So, if we look at it from what is generative AI to more and more and more, I think you see that this has been sets of conversations that have been occurring holistically throughout the many years, but it also sets us up for the conversation that we absolutely must have together. There's many permutations of this slide too. It's also what happens in an Internet Minute. You've seen some of this, these types of Internet Minute slides. This one being from Domo, but the whole issue is, as stated here, is that data never sleeps. And you have to think about its impact, when you're talking about years of content versus what we're having in terms of other social media platforms that we see versus what we have in terms of person. What you see is kind of the individual or the person becoming very, very put in the forefront here, in spite of all of these sort of technologies. Foundational will be issues around privacy, issues around cybersecurity, but you can see also impacts of very prominent individuals, like here it is cited with Taylor Swift. So one can imagine that what's happening when we're talking about aspects and conversations that occur over the internet is that data is being captured. And so one has to kind of posit, if you will, the question to what purpose is data being captured. Again, it's kind of a conversation here that I want to actually spur you on to think about the whole ethical discussions, which are in which cannot occur in a vacuum, and that's the whole issue, because there are societal, depending on where you're coming from, societal questions that we have to think about together. And so let's face it, as we say here, let's face it, common here is going to be information, looking at it from a societal perspective, but people. And technology is really in the background of the conversation. These are tools, whether it's AI, whether it's blockchain, whether it's distributed ledger technologies, they're all tools in a toolbox. They're not really competing against each other, but it is really looking at when you actually develop these tools, are you asking your developers, are you asking yourselves the question of, again, and this is very key, what could be the possibilities of misuse here? What were the intentions that you developed these tools for? And if these intentions of, that have been advertised, and that has to be very clearly stated, are misused, who is accountable? Where is the accountability lie? And accountability and trust, because this is also about trust, in our conversation become key components in the conversation itself. So we have to think about also, what does it mean to have dignity? And I talk about it from a human perspective, not just from a tool perspective, not just talking about ethics, but from a human perspective, especially in the digital age. What is dignity? What does it mean when we correlate it to our online experiences itself? And of course, there is the correlation with ethical considerations. So, digital dignity is, and this is actually a quote from one of the groups that I cite here, but really it's looking at the language. If we can think about it from the present, we have to go think about the many human aspects of the conversation when we look at data lakes and century of data lakes in the 21st century in the cyberspace. Can it be, is there are there aspects of discrimination? Are there aspects of safety? Who has access to these tools? And are we creating a chasm of haves or have-nots in this particular discussion? So dignity or digital dignity becomes part of the discussion when we're talking about context, if you will, of ethics. The other aspect is what happens, when we're looking at the dangers here, or the concerns is around dignity erosion, is how I kind of put it, which is, do you give up privacy or privacy? Do you care? Do you want to be an internet of me? Do you want to look at, are these going to be aspects of surveillance, and can these tools be misused? And there are already conversations around the misuses here of these tools. And of course, it creates also concepts and concerns around profiling itself. So we're looking at it, at a very holistic manner. And of course, as a keynote, you have to think about, spurning the conversations, if you will, and extrapolating how ethical concerns become societal concerns, and of course there's the the whole issue around how it affects me, how it affects you overall. But again, when I look at it, online ethical actions, we look at what's happening over X, what was Twitter, what is the purpose? Or looking at it from gaming, when you're talking about gaming perspective, we talk about the sort of this dilemma of the digital twins in aspects of how we are living in these digital twin types of environments. And of course, it's not just AI or DLT. You can think about robots. You can think about other robotics. One can think about other types of technologies, and we have to put it together to actually posit the question once more and spur on the conversation about the ethical conversations here that must occur. And so, when I look at it from a digital identity perspective, you can call digital twins to some extent looking at digital identity, is around the sense of your human self. The humanness of this conversation has to obviously occur, to areas around, what do I want to keep for my own preservation? What does privacy mean for me? What does privacy mean and security mean for me as an individual? To announce that one doesn't concern about it until something egregiously happens to you is easily said than done. So we have to actually spurn that conversation further. And then of course it looks at it from, what kinds of policy issues do government entities have to take in consideration? And certainly there's been quite a bit that has been occurring from a policy or a government perspective. We have to look at, what is the persona, who, in what context. As I said before, it's always going to be contextual. Who is disenfranchised? Again, thinking about the haves and have-nots. Who has access to these technologies and for what purpose? And who does not? And does that become a conversation in itself? And what about you? I'm always going to ask that question, what about you? Do you care? And I think this is something that we, as you go through the webinar, to consider that as part of your discussion. So the internet, if I extrapolate further, as I told you, I'm taking it, through a conversation, and we're looking at ethics, we're looking at issues around concerns and dignity. We have to think about it from we call it democracy, but it's government, depending on where you're at. Can you use it to strengthen it? We are having elections globally. There has been. What about, does it spur civic engagement, and to what matter? Is there, how does misinformation or disinformation defined? And I keep raising that, are the concerns around digital divides. And it is, have we harnessed technologies to the extent that the cat is out of the bag, if you will. I mean, that there is no turning back. And if there is a turning back, what would the turning back look like? I think we have to think about it from that perspective of when we're looking at ethics, the holistic concerns about not only from a safety perspective, but from a misuse perspective. And misuse will be, again, contextual, depending upon where you are, from what part of the conversation you are taking part in, if you will. So one of the examples is a great company called EquityLab.io. They're talking about and have been defining trust. They talk about AI integrity beginning here. And they also quote, weaving together machines and human processes to establish new trust in AI. So certainly they have tools. You can actually, I have references in the end of the presentation for one to look them up at, but certainly this is a conversation that has occurring for some time now. So it's not just happening in a in the context of not being concrete. It is actually quite concrete, and it's not a theoretical discussion. It's quite concrete. So certainly we have groups like EquityLab.io doing some excellent work in this particular space. But I want to note is this, as I say, there is this tectonic shift, and if there's turning back, is there turning back? I claim that there can't be. Is technology being weaponized? Is really the whole thesis here when we're talking about ethics, and what do we do about it? Again, really emphasizing this polarity between what is revenue generating and where you are accountable when you develop these tools, and where accountability lies. And of course, sort of this whole notion of democracy being in peril, especially pertinent today. One issue is around human centricity around the internet, and there are many headlines that occurred last year, and also issues that are occurring now when we talk about sort of the AI for good. Geoffrey Hinton, once at Google, talked about AI being an existential threat. EU lawmakers are in the process, or have been now passing artificial intelligence regulation. You had the letter that folks were signing, or key prominent figures were signing, in terms of, the development of AI had to be suspended for fear, a threat to its humanity. These were headlines of last year, and so there's issues that are coming up for this year. The open letter that came out, ChatGPT, the folks from OpenAI claiming that it has to be regulated by a U.S. or global agency. Now we know there is now this polarity between what is revenue generating and what needs to be looked at from this discussion of ethical AI and context of ethics. The AI Act and the EU is a first ever, as we see here, legal framework which addresses the risk of AI and its role as the EU. And then trustworthy U.S. in the USA has with NIST and the government has just recently had sign-offs with also other institutions to look at the development of what we call trustworthy AI. So that is most recent. The whole issue here is that there is development, particularly when we're talking about AI, and trust is looking at where the safety lies and where the responsibility and accountability must lie in the context of the discussion to get folks out of this whole filter bubble of areas and issues. Human centricity, as I'm going to be closing in a few more slides, is around you. The internet is you and your use of it. The safety issues around ethics, we have to be posing the questions of what are the potentials of misuse, how can we mitigate on these potentials for misuse, and have that discussion other than what's revenue generating and what's not. And I think also to think about it doesn't have to be a dystopian future. I want to stress that it doesn't have to be. There are really great uses of these technologies, whether for researching for medicinal or healthcare research with responsibility in terms of looking at smart medicine and looking at areas where, when we're thinking about areas of repeated work, that could actually be an opportunity and create more opportunities in the process. Anything that can be automated, but again, looking at where the potential dangers are. So as I say before, it doesn't have to be, but we have to think about where the guardrails can be and should be in the context of the conversation itself. And that's going to really position you for a great discussion. So in conclusion, reflect on your own online behaviors, reflect on how you develop these technologies and for what purpose. And most importantly is looking at, what is humanized here of the internet itself, the dignity aspects of it. And it's a call to action to, what will you do? You can't just fork it off. You will just have to say, what will you do as developers of technologies, as users of technologies, as consumers of these technologies, and to continue the discussion further. These are the references that I have here. There are many more. They're not in the the aspects of. It's not an exhaustive list, but certainly a list that will keep you going and shaping a conversation for more to come. Thank you so much, very much, and have a great webinar.
Tomasz, the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Monique, if you're watching this later for this keynote. And thank you, everybody, for joining. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where in the world you're zooming in from. And welcome to our panel discussion on AI, blockchain, and ethics. My name is Tomasz, and I'm an ecosystem manager at LF Decentralized Trust. And today I'll have the pleasure of introducing our panelists and also helping to moderate this panel. Now, this topic is so relevant that we were actually discussing it on both of the previous webinars, if you had a chance of joining them. It's sort of anytime we started discussing the convergence, the topic of ethics just somehow, got into this discussion. So we decided to do one specifically on this topic. And as Monique mentioned, these are not only technical questions, they're societal ones and affecting everything from our digital identities, digital selves, and democratic participation. So let's jump into it. I'm happy to introduce our panelists for today. We have with us Niamh O'Connell, who's an enterprise sales lead at Casper Labs. We have Michael Glavic, who's a head of growth at AI 2030. And then we have Mohan Venkataraman, who is a CTO at Chainyard. And welcome our panelists, and thank you for joining this panel discussion. So not for me to go too much, to talk too much around it. Let's touch first upon the governance and control. And as we know, governance is a major topic when it comes to technologies like AI and blockchain. And there's been a lot of concerns around who controls these technologies and whether we could be headed towards more centralized power structures. So let's start discussing how we can ensure the proper governance and accountability of these technologies. Niamh, if you would like to go first, who you think should be responsible for overseeing these technologies, and what are the mechanisms, if any, that could prevent misuse?
Yeah, of course. First off, thanks for having me. Delighted to be here and join the panelists here. I think it was interesting, obviously, what Monique was saying. She covered a lot. on her part. And I think, what she was highlighting, particularly around, the context, and what context, that's particularly important. So the same kind of applies for governance. It's really a shared responsibility. And when you think about it, there are so many different stakeholders and parties that are involved. You have, the model providers, you have the model consumers, so the businesses using it, you have the distributors, you have, government agencies, you have the regulator, you have auditors, and you have the end user as well. So everyone plays a role. And it's really important that it's a collaborative effort. And I think blockchain, inherently plays a potential good resolution here, because really it's a multi-party system. And with blockchain inherently, you can have the right access controls and permissions to ensure that, data is shared securely, it's attested, same with the models, it's verified, and in a manner, without necessarily revealing private and personal information, because you can hash information to the public blockchain and keep what you need to keep private. So, the mechanisms really for enabling that is in the context of blockchain, it's, using the technology as that kind of data trusted, secure layer. You can also, think about the smart contracts piece as well, where you can actually enforce rules and policies and streamline the execution of that as well, which I think is, particularly powerful there as well. So, with governance, it's really enabling us to have the guardrails in place, like Monique said, that makes it, more safe, and to really ensure the responsible usage at scale. Would love to hear the other guys' thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I'll throw something out there. I'm going to be somewhat radical in how I think about these things. Because I'm part of an organization that's all about responsible AI, but I'm looking at AI as evolving extraordinarily rapidly. It's something that isn't just about faster answers. It's about a partnership, and it's about a partnership between the AI itself and the people who are using it. So when I start thinking about governance, I would very much like it if we could figure out a way that the people who are using the AI are the governing factors, along with the AI itself, as to how they're using it and what they're doing with it. I'm pretty sure that a lot of people will say, no, we need governments to do that. Well, which government would you choose to do that? I don't know of any government that I would like to have responsible for the AI technologies that I need to use and do things with it. I can't think of a single one, but if you guys can, that's up to you.
Well, let me try to throw in something which is slightly different. So I come from the practical world of building an application from scratch or ideation to reality, right? And I've been involved with many projects with IBM, and we also have our own solution, which is called Trust Your Supplier. And so what is what is published versus what is real often is very different. What we saw is that during the governance process, once our product went into production phase, governance is actually, as you rightly pointed out, is you need to have both the stakeholders, of course, all of you, and all the stakeholders together. But in a consortium type, since I'm talking about blockchain, and this solution has both blockchain and AI, so it's a unified solution. So always separate the technology governance from the solution governance. So this is a technology that brings suppliers, buyers, validators all together. But the consortium itself is just a buyer's network. If we build the governance structure around just the buyers, then either the consortium could be successful or there could be potential for collusion. So we built a governance structure in which you have both the buyers who control the network and the stakeholders who are actually benefiting from whatever the outcome of this network is. So that is one thing. But we also noticed that you cannot simply have an on-chain governance, because everyone who joined this network, they actually come in with their legal representatives to negotiate with us before they even joined this network. So we have had one-on-one legal discussions with every member of the network, whether it's Nokia or Vodafone or IBM. They bring in there, and it takes almost 6 months before you iron out all these governance issues. Are you compliant with the GDPR regulations in Europe? Are you compliant with the California Privacy Act? So we work out all these things, and then you can have on-chain governance so that all the features that this team comes together. So that's kind of our experience. So in my view, I think governance is a collaborative effort in order to prevent collusion and also to have the benefits of the solution. So if there is no collaboration between the participants, whether it's on the blockchain or whether it is with the AI models, then there is a potential for failure. So bringing that's kind of my take on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a very interesting topic, right? Because we are maybe discussing a lot of different levels of governance, right? I think we could probably have another webinar just on that. And like Niv said, there are a lot of stakeholders involved in that process, right? And we saw that a lot with the blockchain world earlier, right? You need to have the off-chain governance and the rules and regulations set up before the actual technical solution is implemented. So I think it's a fascinating debate, but I would like to also dig into some other topics. And then we have time at the end, maybe we can return to that. Because I also find what Michael said quite an interesting topic, how it's sort of evolving between the user and the AI models itself. But
one more thought there. One more thought.
Sure.
We're thinking about this in governance in a very, very high level. I try to think about it was where does the rubber hit the road? And it hits in the organizations that are using it around the world, right? And it's in every organization. It's in every piece of every organization. AI is becoming this network management tool for all of the different technologies, which eventually will evolve into smart cities. But the idea is, who inside of an organization is the leader of where AI and responsible AI and the ultimate uses of those. Who is that person? Tom Davenport did an extraordinary article about 4 months ago where he talks about the chief data officers being the manager of where AI goes. That's a revolutionary sort of thought. But since AI is an awful lot about data, that might be a great place for it to go. And so the CDOs will become CDAIOs as the core element of how management is done with AI inside of organizations, which will be predominantly one of the major pieces that are being used outside of what people are doing with it. Just a thought.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you there. That's exactly what we're seeing as well. That it really sits within technology and within the data science unit, but then also thinking about, the privacy officer, the compliance risk officer, and even the CFO, like to what degree, in what context do they own that responsibility? Particularly as you're looking to roll it out for different use cases and at scale. I liked what you were saying there, Michael, as well, around, thinking about really who has the ownership and, design incentives, are a mechanism, obviously, that blockchain, again, inherently can facilitate. And I think if we were able to have it at that level without government involvement, that would be definitely interesting and would change the game. But I wonder, it's just more a food for thought. Today, though, without a level of regulation and enforcement, then how do we prevent against bad actors? Yes, you have the disincentives not to be, you can't participate. But beyond that, how do we manage that at scale and prevent, further bad acting occurring as well? It's something that, is a major challenge for us to think about today.
So that both are very good points, but blockchain being a team sport, it's actually so when we deploy a consortium, there is no, the privacy officers or the chief data officers of each organization have to collaborate. So essentially, Trust Your Supplier is actually run by a third-party organization, which is completely neutral, like Chainyard Supply Management. It's not run by any individual organization. So we had to float an independent organization that owns the technology and owns the governance of that technology as well as the solution. So that's kind of like how we notice. So whether it is, so the blockchain is there in all the assets, whether it is the smart contracts, the AI models, the UI workflows, everything is managed by this independent company using these data officers from different companies coming together. So that's kind of our experience, and that's how we've observed that there is success in getting this out.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I've seen that approach as well over the last kind of couple of years as well, where companies have tried to come together and tried a different approach to more to kind of disintermediate that, and it has been a challenge initially because it's a mindset shift and changing how you've done business, until thus far. So I definitely see that model, working. And also see the disintermediation type models working as well. It just, again, depends on the use case and application, for sure.
Right.
Right. Thanks a lot. I actually did want to ask you if you can comment on Michael's comment and if what you are seeing on the market. So thanks a lot for that. But yeah, let's also dig into another topic that I want to address. And that is digital identity and privacy. And as we heard in the keynote, the concept of digital twins and the increasing reliance on digital identities are presenting the new challenges for privacy and autonomy. So what are, in your view, the key privacy and autonomy concerns when we apply AI and blockchain to concepts like digital twins or digital identity, and what are you seeing in your work? Michael, would you like to go first?
Not necessarily, but I will if you choose me. I also work with an organization called the AI Mind Systems and Data Technology Organization. And we've created a wisdom network, which is all about digital identity and privacy. And again, it focuses right on people, and the people have the ownership, if you will, of their own identity, their own digital information. All of the different elements that are there belong to them. And the fact that right now the big organizations who market to us own that data needs to change. That data needs to be part of what individual people have as part of their personal identity, and they own it. They have the ability to share it in the way they want to do it, especially as it relates to healthcare and really anything else that they want to do. But in my mind, that's where the ownership of personal data belongs.
Yeah, I totally agree with that as well. I think, the challenge with digital identities and, digital objects is it's more that off-chain component, so when you're creating this item, you still need to share personal information, typically thus far. And so ensuring that there are, proper controls and security and enforcement in place. It goes back to, that off-chain, what is stored off-chain, and managing that, because that's, obviously at risk. And then, just looking at blockchain as well, it's important to think about smart contract capabilities as well, and ensuring that, they're properly audited as well, because smart contracts can also be exposed to security vulnerabilities too. So yeah, I would say that it's definitely initially the off-chain capability, but there are aspects of the on-chain capability that one would need to think about as well from a privacy standpoint.
Yeah, I could give you some comments there as well. I think my first experience with digital twins goes back to my work at MCI for network management. So we had a digital twin that represented every element on the network, whether it's a switch, router, or whatever it is. And for me, that twin is 100% replica of what is happening in the physical entity or the digital entity. And so if there was a fault in that physical entity, that would be reflected in the digital twin. So the thing is that there are great benefits of having digital twins, because one cannot visualize this entire network in a whole region like 2 states or 3 states by going across, but all that can be brought together in a small screen where all these digital twins are working together. So it was great experience to do that. But the downside is that you have to make sure that there is enough security and protection on all those digital twins, because one could easily hack into any of those twins, and then you can have a whole network failure. So the beauty is digital twins bring experience of where the fiber cut is by just looking at a small screen, but at the same time, hackers can just take control of it. The second experience we had, now fast forward to today's world where blockchain and AI are available, I did a project for Lenovo, which is one of our key customers. And what happens is so most of it is not people, right? I'm talking about IoTs and sensors and servers. These servers are deep inside data centers. Sometimes they are in remote places where there are actually no people. So the digital twin concept brings alive what is going on in their equipment right inside these data centers. So our experience was that we could easily map the digital twin using decentralized identities given to these digital twins so that they can authenticate themselves and make sure that there is data security and identity security. And at the same time, these digital twins were programmed with smart contracts as well as AI, so they could monitor things like license expiry. For example, if the licenses on that particular server expired, it will notify and then redo this and it all. Again, all this involved putting them in a secure enclave on a cloud and making sure all the right protections are there, or else, we could have had severe data privacy issues, and we could have had severe, even identity issues, somebody taking control of the network. So those two are critical. And again, at that time, we did not care too much about what the AI is doing because it was more predictive AI. So, I can comment more on how predictive versus generative AI, what are the security concerns that one has, but, but I won't, I'll just yield back to you and wait for your questions.
One thing I would add, one thing I would add just there, I think it's fascinating around the digital identities for AI agents as well. So, thinking about how that space is really going to evolve where, the wallet has everything from the AI's configuration to the data sources to the interaction history, particularly as they become more autonomous. So yeah, really fascinated by that.
I can actually take a thread there and explain if what we do right now is in Trust Your Supplier is also a digital identity where a corporation has a digital identity. Actually, we give decentralized identities to every supplier that a buyer does business with. So one of the issues there is we do a lot of AI profiling to complete the supplier's profile, and that data could be real or fake. You don't know if you're sourcing it from third parties. At the same time, if you source from secure. So one of the mechanisms is to give control of the data to the owner of the data. So in this case, it is the supplier. So the network itself does not control any portion of the data. Even if the AI agent has pre-filled the profile, it's based on a consent that the supplier has given, and they have to essentially own it and sign it off before it gets into the blockchain, and they own it. So that's the model that we apply there, and they all get decentralized IDs and they own their verifications as part of their decentralized wallet. Now, the AI agents, the way we look at it, you rightly pointed out, yeah, that's what I was saying, at some point there could be opportunity to discuss is these AI agents essentially, they are tracked on the blockchain, essentially, where they are sourcing the data from, what are they, which URLs and links, where did they scrape it, and how did they really populate it, is all captured as a historical sequence of workflow events on the chain, so that at any point in time, if there's a legal or a issue or any other kind of ethical issue, there is proof of evidence on how something was arrived at.
Yeah, we're doing something similar on the data and the model side of things. So again, you are essentially attesting to the public data set, your private data set, that's free from PII, etc. And that, your model was trained, in compliance with upcoming regulations. So you know, similar concept, but just, yeah, different use case. So that's great to hear. Love that.
Great, thank you, Niv and Mohan. Would you like to add anything, Michael?
No, I was thinking back to the digital twinning and the different types of things that it's being used for. I'm doing a lot of work now with smart cities and the cognitive infrastructures. Ability to map out with the digital twin exactly what it is that you're trying to do and be able to move back and forth between the physical elements that you're dealing with and the digital twins about it is a huge leap, I think, in how quickly we're going to be able to create these smart cities and get them functioning in all the different elements and all the different pieces that they're part of. So just throwing that in there.
Great. Thank you, Michael. And thanks, Bara. I saw that you also mentioned in the chat that feel free to ask questions. We will for sure open the questions at the end of the discussion as well. But of course, if something pops up, you know, and that we don't move to a completely different thread, let us know, and then we'll ask our panelists in the meantime. But yeah, let's thank you so much for your insights. But let's keep going, because I think Monique has mentioned a couple of different things, and let's try to cover a bit more, right? And so another topic that she mentioned, and I think we've been reading a lot about recently, is the misinformation and accountability aspects as well, right? And I think this year, especially with the year of elections all around the world, has been it's been, you know, significant, can I say, like, expression of concern, right? I mean, people are very concerned as AI is used to generate more and more content, right? And of course, it can be very concerning. I read relatively recently in, I think it was in MIT Technology Review, that AI-generated content was actually used less than expected so far during the election processes. But of course, I guess we'll have to wait and see where the future takes us there. But anyway, I wanted to ask you about your opinions on that, and also not just what you think about it, but what is your opinion of how we can, you know, what are the steps that we can take to mitigate this misinformation and make sure that the responsible parties are held accountable for it. Niv, would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure. You know, I think it's really a combination of three things, you know, so the technology aspect, the policy, and then the educational side as well. So, you know, looking at the technology, you know, blockchain can be a potential solution in some regards, you know, with regards to watermarking, where, you know, you can prove the origin. And if in fact, you know, the content has been modified, and then you can also have, you know, the authenticity and verification aspect as well. But, you know, what that doesn't stop is really, you know, the copying across platforms and then the actions that are taken after that. So that's where the policy piece really comes into play. You know, we need to have a clear kind of standardized kind of format that is enforced across these platforms, because that's going to hold the companies accountable, which will in turn hold the end users, because if you want to use that platform, you have to agree and accept their policies. Right. And then, you know, on the educational side, once, you know, we can reach that that level, it's really important then that, you know, there are awareness campaigns around how to identify that, because what we're seeing even today is it's after the fact, you know, the damage is done. So that standardized policy enforcement and education around how to identify that and it is absolutely critical to try and, like, you know, stop that. Would love to hear the others.
Thank you, Niv. Mohan, would you like to go next?
Sure. I'm just thinking, interestingly, like, you know, I had my team and they built a little example use case out of using one of the LLMs, you know, and the thing is, like, they built it and the use cases work very well. But then when you asked it any question like who is your favorite Hollywood actor, it would respond. And this is a supply chain use case, right? So it got me thinking, like, you know, that the amount of, there are two things. One is like making sure that in order for it to just respond to the types of use cases, we have to put a lot of guardrails around it. First is like what is allowed, what is not allowed, and and what this whole use case is about. So context and reasoning and all are very essential to prevent misinformation. The second is like we also notice that misinformation can happen through various means, like because these generative AI LLMs can generate code. We noticed that we could ask, even though it has been built for a use case, they could send in a prompt that it writes a program that could be malicious in nature and return back. So we studied that misinformation can happen in many ways. That could be a biased human being who could say, please give me the worst answer possible as part of their prompt, or increase the temperature, and you could get bad information. So there is a whole set of considerations when, considerations that need to be, as you said, policies and guidelines have to be first established before building these use cases and models. So essentially policies are enforceable. So all those policies should be either incorporated in the code, or it should be incorporated as guardrails and should be enforceable. That is number one, we noticed. And so that's what we are doing. So that's why we never built anything fully for TYS. The other thing is, like, we also noticed that if you used pre-trained LMs or language models, they tend to be trained on a variety of things, and each one. So if you ask Gemini versus ChatGPT an answer, they may all give you different answers because their training is completely different. The biases could be different, and you have noticed that how Gemini misrepresented the founding fathers, or whether yesterday I noticed a few more examples of where certain LLMs are not giving the right information. So one of the things we are exploring is, can you train these LMs? So once you get the LMs right out of graduation from these vendors, can you train them on your own proprietary data suite? So private training using your own methodologies, methods, and trusted sources of information, using NORA or using LoRa or QLoRa, or even nowadays reflective tuning methodologies, and then applying them to your use cases may reduce the amount of misinformation that can be generated. So this is kind of like where we are trending. I will leave it at that, but those are all helpful. And of course, establishing policies, procedures, third parties to come and review this code and everything is all very important in order to make sure that we can reduce the impact of misinformation.
Interesting. So great comments on both of these. I tend to shy away, since we're in the middle of an election here that's getting pretty ugly. And what I'm thrilled of is that neither side has started to use AI too much to attack the other one, because that would make it worse. And there's already been 2 attempted assassinations. So rather keep that as quiet as possible. But I would just go on to say that that AI and responsible AI will be a primary piece of what's going to be happening in governance and elections to come. I would just like to see it be used sparingly for this particular one, because it seems to be that this is going to be uglier as it gets into November.
Yeah. I think one thing additional I think that is important to mention is, even if you're training, your own LLM with your own data, like depending on how that model was trained, there's still going to possibly be inherently bias that exists. Sure. Because 99% of these LLMs in the market have all been trained on public data, and as we all know, it doesn't, represent, online data does not represent all groups of society today. And so, what some companies are obviously looking to do, if they are focused on that side of things, is how do they have better representation of all of these groups with synthetic, data and to represent these. But again, it's still a major challenge to, erode those biases, which can then affect, this misinformation and then the decisions that you make as well. So, but I think a lot of people who are in this space are very much aware of that and are mindful as well of like how much they are using today, AI type applications to make decisions, which is good.
You're actually right. Even if we train our own LMs, there's a potential for bias. So there is a process. I had discussed this with Jerry of IBM, and it's interesting, right? So you first collect, because we are in the risk business, right? So we collect all these worldwide examples of potential risks, right? What kind of risk can happen in different scenarios? And then we run it through risk managers from different scenarios who are actually supposed to rank them or even comment on them as these are authentic, these are not. And then we feed it to low-ranking adaptation algorithms like LoRa and all to get a trained model. Even then, it doesn't mean that training is going to give me the perfect answer, but it'll be much better than having a commercial model directly work with our data inside the company. So I look at it as, you get a graduate out of college and then you train them in a master's class on financial applications and risk management. And then you take them into your company and then give them your own data so that they can give you some useful outcomes. So this is kind of our analogy internally.
Yeah, and I think, a lot of companies are looking at RAG type use cases as well, at least to help on the hallucination side of things. Because obviously, you're able to pull and reference, more up-to-date information in context of your industry or be it your business with your personal data as well. So it's definitely helping, reduce hallucination issues as a whole, which is good, which is good to see.
Great, thank you. And now so the last set of questions, and just keeping in mind of the time, was about also some of the solutions and practical applications. I just wanted to ask you one last question on the problems before we get into the solutions. And that was something else that Monique has mentioned in her keynote, and that was about the democracy and engagement, as AI and blockchain are sometimes seen as tools for enhancing transparency and participation in democratic process, but they are also, could be concerns and might actually have the opposite effect. So in your view, can these technologies strengthen democracy and civic engagement, or do they pose a risk to these principles? And Mohan, would you like to go first?
Sure. So I think even before these technologies came in, there has always been both divisive and inclusive effects of technology. And I remember an application I did many years ago for, how you send out notices on people who don't pay taxes. That itself has got a lot of bias because, say, if you send a notice to a company that owes you $10 billion, the chances of you recovering is very low as opposed to somebody who has to just pay $5 a day out of the fear of the whole process. So in all that, there could be bias. And so a lot of the bias is settled. I was involved with that for almost a year. Is settled through manual intervention where people look at the bias is not there. It doesn't go, you don't send notices to a certain section, certain minority groups, certain regions, and all that stuff. Fast forward to today's technology, you can bring that forward and it'll have the same impact. So essentially, these technologies can be both divisive or they can be inclusive, depending on how we model the use case. And, so as a misinformation can actually divide people, there is a solution and then there is a technology. The access to the technology, it definitely requires high resources. For example, most of my programming, I'm doing it on a laptop where the algorithms can use CPUs. But in fact, if you want to have good access, you need GPUs and power. So it's really very expensive. And second is good quality data is very, very limiting. So if you have bad data, it can be divisive. If it is good data, it can be inclusive. So there are a lot of these subjective factors that come into play. One thing we try to do internally in our company is always to use open source type technologies where the community has come together and contributed to building that AI technology. Hugging Face, for example, is a very good example in the AI world where people contribute their models or there are open source models. Or you can also use Hyperledger technologies, which are more open source opposed to proprietary models. So, so we tend to lean towards these kind of community involved development so that division is reduced, there is more trust in the models, and it is more inclusive. I mean,
yeah, I think, it's really all about how the technology is managed by the people and implemented. It can be used in a good manner, and they're also it can be used by bad actors, and we're obviously seeing that today. The number of zero-day attacks has like accelerated. Not necessarily that's primarily attributed to AI. But I think, in terms of the benefits, definitely more visibility, more insights, and ability to make more informed decisions. I think that's fundamentally which is super important. That's even why I got into blockchain a decade ago, because I liked the idea as well of, so even the supply chain side of things, like being able to make more informed decisions, even about, the ingredients, the products that you buy, the skincare, that you buy and you're consuming, because we don't know, they're all opaque. It's like the AI systems today, they're like a black box. We don't know what is going into these products and that we're consuming. And so even just at that level, having the ability to make more informed decisions is really, really powerful and isn't focused on enough.
Yeah. And informed decisions are important. The ability to know what's going on is absolutely vital. I think where AI and blockchain and the other technologies are coming to our benefit is to have a better understanding of what we can do, what are the opportunities, what are the possibilities that we can use to develop new ideas and new products and new services, those kinds of things. I think that's where technology is going to be at its most important, and that's just a kind of a short view of where the world is going to go as we look at the creation of cognitive infrastructures and the management of AI of all of those different technologies and IoT and AR, VR and digital twinning and all of those things, with blockchain as the core database. That's where the evolution of these cognitive infrastructures are happening in smart cities. And I look at this and I go, the world is pretty cool right now. Things are going in a nice direction.
Yeah, and if you think about,
go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I'll go after.
No, it just came to my mind. One of the inclusiveness of that blockchain has brought together in the public side. I was doing a project for home ownership for a rental company. One of the projects that is fractional ownership of rental properties. And see, a lot of the minorities and a lot of people who don't have that high income cannot be in the property market and make money. So this was one way by which the blockchain technology was able to bring people together so that they can have fractional ownership and make money. And I also saw these automatic market makers like Agave or Compound have brought in new kinds of people who could become lenders or borrowers in the market. So, I mean, it is interesting to see how the small player is now become included as though they are part of a big playing game. So I just wanted to throw that example, and I can see that even in smart cities.
Yeah, it's definitely becoming, a more level playing field, which is great. And when we talk about innovation, I'm really excited to see what's going to unfold there from an AI standpoint. And then, when blockchain and AI converges, and then other disruptive techs as things mature, because right now, the focus is obviously in terms of ROI, it's been mainly around productivity gains. And it's interesting because a lot of the companies thus far are focusing on using it internally, for employee assist type use cases. So they're not using it in the context of their private data, their personal data, their sensitive data. And so once companies start feeling more comfortable to do that, it's going to be really exciting to see the types of use cases that, come out there, and how it's going to really redefine how businesses operate. The innovation that we'll see there is going to be, I think it's going to be really exciting.
That's true.
Thank you very much for these insights. Now, we have 15 minutes left. So let me just pause here for a moment and just ask our participants if anybody has a question. Okay, don't see anything.
We must have been really good at this. Let's see. We've answered all
Also, if something obviously comes to light after, feel free to reach out to any of us as well.
Right.
We're happy to also address things offline as well.
Great. Yeah, thanks a lot. Okay, so if you don't have questions, we still have 15 minutes. So let's talk a little bit about the future. So, we are talking here primarily about the AI and blockchain convergence, right? But there are other technologies that are also on the horizon, and they are, converging as well. So we have the robotics, we have quantum computing, I wanted to ask you, what do you see as the future when these technologies evolve and interact with each other? Niamh, would you like? Oh, Michael, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll throw it out since I've become really enamored with the whole concept of the cognitive infrastructures evolving into smart cities. I'm working on a couple of those. And as I look at the future, and I look at the combination of all the various technologies, and I told you what I thought of in terms of the infrastructure, I'm seeing those being built around the world. There's 3-4 years ago, there was probably 3 or 4 of them, with NEOM being the poster child, and now there's probably 20 of them around the world, and I would think within the next 3 to 5 years there'll be 50. And then all of a sudden, what we're going to see is a connection of not just the cities, but all of the different elements, especially in healthcare. We'll start to see an evolution of healthcare using these technologies to then network the data around, so that we can get a better understandings of what these disease and problems and maladies and and life changes are happening, and we can look at them from a mega sort of view to say, these 5 million people have these kinds of problems that we can fix right away because we're creating the drugs and things like that because there's a market for them. And then here's all these small ones that no one has ever really looked at before, but we can go after those as well and create some kind of help for those as well. And that was something that we could never do before. So you think of that from the future, that the technology is being used to be able to not just take care of the massive problems, but the little tiny ones as well. And I think that's a very powerful way to look at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you go ahead. I went first last time. Did I?
No, you're good. You're good. Please.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll keep this short. I also kind of share a similar view. Look, I think it's going to be a lot easier for us to, on a day-to-day basis, to move around, just have more mobility, move around more freely and globally as well. It's going to bring society as a whole, more together. I don't think language isn't going to be a barrier. And it's just going to create, I think, a more level playing field to be able to interact and collaborate with one another. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing that.
So, I'm seeing like a lot of tenders nowadays, and each of these tenders are about can you bid on this particular use case and can you not? And there are 2 types of, I can see both. There is benefits, and then there is also things that can actually optimize and bring efficiencies, which means less people can do more. So those kind of things I'm seeing as technology converges. But the recent example, which I really loved when I was at the blockchain and healthcare technology, was where there was a projection of the MIT, not MIT, but the Mass General Hospital interventional radiology, where they essentially used virtual reality to simulate the whole operational environment. And that was combined with AI, which was actually driving it. And of course, blockchain can play a role, but the blockchain was not mentioned, but I do believe that blockchain plus AI plus virtual reality, and it is actually called extended reality, because what happens is if you use Apple's Vision Pro, it studies your eye movement through AI and all those things, and essentially it can direct the doctor with additional information. So that was very, very exciting. And I see that kind of a unification of technologies, and with quantum computing, it is going to bring more power and speed into the whole equation.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a very fascinating application. And so this professor from Mass General was saying that his whole vision is to create a holodeck, which means like anytime a doctor who wants to learn about how to do something can go in, and then you can just instantaneously create a virtual environment where you can train yourself. So that I see as one of the best convergent examples for bringing healthcare to more and more people. The other, and now you mentioned, Niam, the customer service environment. Klarna is a company that essentially implemented customer service. They brought in AI, customer service agents and all these things together, but they essentially were able to successfully deploy this in 30 plus countries using language translation and all that technique. But at the same time, a lot of people were impacted in the sense people got out of the race, but the technology helped improve customer service worldwide. So that's another end of the example. And the third I'm seeing is how do you bring audio, video, chat, interactiveness into video streaming and the whole holistic experience of watching videos and movies in the future. So these are all like real world examples for which actually we are trying to work with our partners to build and build. But that's what I'm seeing as coming in the future. Some of the examples. I haven't seen as many as quantum computing coming in, but behind the scene, I guess the cloud that powers most of these interesting applications is going to be powered by quantum computers as opposed to the traditional GPUs and NPUs.
Right.
There's a whole science using quantum dots and things like that to be to use the quantum particles in all sorts of different ways. We did something to attack COVID. We had an ability to identify the virus very, very early just by putting the bacteria of COVID into quantum dots and immediately saying, yes, this is COVID, or no, this is some flu or something like that. And what I'm seeing is, especially in healthcare, those kinds of quantum dots, quantum particle technologies are being used in all kinds of different ways. So that's going to be a huge evolution for us in the very near future.
It's interesting as well to hear within the healthcare side that in a particular use case that there have been studies found, and executives within healthcare were telling me about this a couple months back, that it can be used in a manner to humanize certain types of experiences. So when you think about, the patient to doctor relationship and how overwhelmed doctors can be, and they have, a very short time per appointment to see an individual. And so a lot of the time in different countries as well, particularly in Europe, this isn't even digitized. It's all based on the physical notes that they take. So the conversational chatbot can capture everything and listen and learn a bit more to the patient. And in these studies has actually made them have a better relationship and felt that there was actually empathy on the other end from the technology. So in that particular use case, you think about how you can bring in the voice aspect and the empathy aspect as well. It's interesting how in certain contexts it can improve certain experiences.
Right.
Great, thank you so much. All right, we have 6 minutes left. Let's see if we can squeeze in one more topic. You want to look at the centralized solutions. Would you like to ask a question or no? It's
Yeah, no,
okay.
thank you very much. My name is Michael Novak, and
I'm Michael.
I've been involved with blockchain and decentralized since the early days of crypto, and followed it through decentralized identity, supply chains, and here we are. We now have generative AI, and I talk with some groups about how to fight hallucinations by potentially using a blockchain mechanism to capture the fact, whatever the LLM says, and then we can go back later and say, what was the provenance when it said cows fly? There you go. But then it also gets involved, and I wrote a little bit out in the text, is as Mohan was talking about, the inclusion of multimodal capabilities. Sometimes I want information given to me by text because I'm busy and I can just sit down and type it in. There's other times when my hands are busy and I just want to say, tell me, what's the analysis of that financial spreadsheet? What's going on with the marketing contract? And have it given to me vocally in my language, multilingual. But under the covers, there needs to be a way again to potentially use something like verifiable credentials to verify the source and the target that would run in a decentralized architecture. So I would still maintain control over those assets and that capability, potentially using a smart contract that says, yes, I'm willing to talk about this, but if I mention bananas, make sure that's considered privy information and that no one gets access to that unless I give them permission. That's all.
Quite interesting.
So it's an exciting time. And then as Michael brought up with smart cities, you know, again, this is a greenfield opportunity because they're trying to serve citizens' needs. And again, the capability to combine AI with a blockchain architecture means that I can access and provide those services to citizens in a much more robust manner than 9 to 5, please call in and push number 3 on the phone.
Right.
Yeah. You'll see that melding of all of the different technologies begin to happen inside of a cognitive infrastructure.
Yes.
Evolving into smart cities. That's going to happen. And it's happening.
I've been working with NIST with their reference framework and currently their AI system, AISIC, so AI Safety Institute, trying to write the high level goals and then bring those into, okay, great. So we believe in safety and security. How do we implement that? And that's what the Safety Institute is doing, is taking that from that public sector perspective, is how do we implement AI in a safe and secure and responsible manner? The next layer will be, okay, great. Now that we've got it operationally, how do we implement it? Oh, guess what? We could use a decentralized system to provide that robustness so that, again, if, you know, telephone pole number 12 goes down, so what? We reroute that around to the other nodes and we still provide those services to first responders, or just me trying to figure out how do I get access to my water bill that's due next month. So
I love what you're saying, just everything that you're kind of sharing with us there. You know, on the NIST framework side of things, I'm happy to share materials there as well. We submitted a patent there a while back, so we've written a few kind of blog pieces around that, and how, you know, blockchain inherently can be a great tool and mechanism to provide the governance that we need and bring more trust, you know, to the AI system. So exactly what you were saying around, you know, the importance of the data lineage and that audit trail and time-stamped capability, and being able to identify when these issues arise in the data and the models. That's exactly what we're doing with Prove AI.
Absolutely. And usually, depends on who I speak with, I'll usually say distributed systems, because many times when I say blockchain, they're like,
Yeah.
But we
yeah.
understand on this call. yeah.
Exact same here. Yeah, exactly.
And of course, in Trust Your Supplier, I think I talked about this in consensus. We are experimenting with things like, the model lifecycle management, meaning like our model is built on top of the foundational model. So we got many different models of risk assessment, risk probabilities, risk this, how, it is essentially we are talking about supply chain risks and supplier risks worldwide, right? So all our models, at the model level, when you first deploy the model, when the model is being designed, so what are how do you manage the whole life cycle? You treat the model as an asset. You treat your agents as assets, your prompts as assets, and then you can have asset lifecycle management, for which blockchain is very good. And you can track it as what data it was trained on, who trained it, who was the engineers who were involved with it, who are this. And then when the model actually gets instantiated, at that point in time, you start tracking the workflow of the model. None of this is going to prove anything that is 100% foolproof, but it brings in a certain level of trust within the ecosystem to say there is somebody who is keeping an eye on these things in case of problems. So we are doing both these as part of our whole Trust Your Supplier ecosystem.
Yeah, no, I think you've been doing great work. I've also been working with the GBA, the Government Blockchain Association, if you're familiar with their blockchain maturity model that they've developed. For that same reason, people don't think about it until it breaks, just like with supply chain. What do you mean my supplies didn't show up here? What happened? Oh, we didn't do this. So, agreed. Very important.
And there's an important aspect is like when the models start, the starting state, you have to make sure that the starting state of a model, because they all have to be stateless, right? Because you give it an instance and then you give it an alert or a notification or an impetus, and then the model starts to work, and then it creates an outcome, right? And so one of the things that we talked even in the blockchain days of smart contracts is like, how do you make sure that the contract, every time the contract starts up with the same state and then ends with its outcome can be different, but the state where it starts should be consistent so that you have trust in the starting state. So how do you track that, and how do you save the context of starting? Can you use virtual container and stuff like that?
Okay, I'm sorry I have to interrupt this discussion, but we are at time, and I think we will have to wrap up. Actually, I see Michael Novak has shared his LinkedIn here, so I can actually also put it to you, Mohan, so you can contact them. And as Niv said, you're also very welcome to reach out to them individually if you'd like to continue discussion. So yeah, apologies, but I do have to wrap it up. So first of all, thank you so much to our panelists, Michael, Niv, and Mohan, for joining, and thank you to Inalba for organizing this webinar. And last but definitely not least, thank you to everybody joining us. Thank you, Michael Novak, also for your questions. And I look forward to seeing you again on the next webinar. Bara, would you like to conclude, or Mariana? I'm not sure if I would like to have some final thoughts, or should we just wrap it up?
I think you said it all, and I also just want to thank all the speakers, but also the guests and attendees of the webinar. We will share the recording of the webinar in a couple of days. So thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of the day. For some, it's early afternoon. For some, it's already evening. But wherever you are, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Ania. We shall keep in touch. Thank you, Thomas.
For sure, definitely.
Thank you, Mohan.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.